Okay, we're back to begin another week of Bhagavatam streams. So we're up to chapter 3, and the title here is The Purpose of Mundane Religion, or the role that mundane religion or regular religion plays in the Bhagavatam's concept of life. So let's jump right in. Shuka had declared that hearing and chanting about Hari was the most important human activity, but several sages doubted this answer, considering it one-sided and biased, to say that one only needs to worship Hari and nothing else is very important. So Shuka addressed them in an unusual tone of voice as he began reciting a long list. It's an unusual tone of voice because he's going to talk now in a way that he doesn't usually talk at all. And it's because he's quoting a list. So it's not really something that's heartfelt or that he fully believes in. So this is what he says. If you desire the spiritual light, worship those who protect spiritual knowledge. So see, the question is, why are you saying the protest from the protest? The question from the sages, or one of the sages, was, Shuka, why did you just say, you're always saying Vishnu, 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 Hari, Hari, Hari? Isn't that one-sided, is biased? You're always focused on just that one thing. So now what he's going to do is he's going to say, no, it's all right. If you want this, you worship that. If you want this, worship the other thing. If you want... What I'm talking about here is something different than all that stuff. That's why I keep talking about Vishnu, Vishnu, Vishnu. That's the summary of what he's going to say. Now here's the details. If you desire the spiritual light, that's me, you can guess what that means. You got an intuition for what that means. If you would desire Brahmajyoti, if you desire the spiritual light, then worship those who protect spiritual knowledge, because knowledge leads to light. He said, if you desire virile senses, worship the King of Paradise. So let's say you desire mukti, then worship the wise. Let's say you desire bhakti, which is pleasure. Then then worship Indra, the guy who's got the best sense gratification. If you desire children, what do you think you should worship? People that are really good at making children. This is the basic advice, really simple, smart advice. If you desire children, worship the progenitors. If you desire opulence, worship people that are rich. Right? If you desire opulence, worship the goddess of illusion. The goddess of illusion, Maya, the one, she is wealth itself. So if you desire riches, then worship the goddess who's in control of illusion, because all that stuff is a big illusion. For power, worship fire. Yeah, I'm distracted because I got all this news on my mind. From America, it's crazy. But after this, I'm going to do a video on the transits. I'll do one video on it. Most of the time it's just a post because this stuff is so crazy. I'll do a video on it soon. All right, so if you want power, worship fire. Even this is an interesting list to see the type of stuff, right? Spiritual light, you want spiritual light, worship people who have knowledge. You want pleasure, worship Indra, the king. If you want children, worship progenitors, people who know how to make babies. If you want opulence, worship illusion. It's funny. If you want power, worship fire. It's interesting. If you want wealth, worship the gods of tangible things. Those are the Vasus and Dhanishta, right? Let me make these words a little bigger so I can follow where the hell I am. If you want career recognition, this is good too. This also relates to your nakshatras. If you want career recognition, worship everyone. That's really cool advice. This means also the Vishvadevas. So he's pointing out some of the nakshatra gods. He says, if you want wealth, then that's Dhanishta. Go worship the Vasus. If you want career success, then that's Uttarashada. So like career success or political success or social success, then worship everyone because those are the people that support you and give you success. To be healthy, worship the twin gods of health, Ashvini. For sustenance, worship the earth. If you want nutrition, if you want to be healthy. If you want to be healthy, you worship Ashvini, but specifically if you want good food related to health, then worship Bhumi, the goddess of earth. For stability, I like this one. For stability, worship the horizon. If you worship the earth, if you want beauty, worship the celestial musicians. No, you guys, stop thinking. Just listen. You think so much. You want to know Ganesh and Shiva? Just see what this guy tells you. First listen. But by the way, fire is Agni and Agni is Shiva. Later on, you'll figure out the answers to all your questions. First, take in the good information. To be healthy, worship the twin gods of health. For sustenance, worship the earth. For stability, worship the horizon. If you want beauty, worship the celestial musicians. Who are the celestial musicians? Gandharvas. They're beautiful. If you desire beautiful women, worship the celestial courtesans. It could also be if you want to be a beautiful woman, worship the celestial courtesan. Who's that? That's Urvashi. That's Indra's main dancer. If you desire fame, worship sacrifice. Wow. If you want riches, worship the clever gods of wealth. It's a little different than wealth or whatever. If you want, no, I'm not going to break this down because this is totally tangential. Right? If you want knowledge, worship the god who became transformed by knowledge, Shiva. If you want an excellent marriage, worship his most exemplary wife, Sati. If you desire morality, worship the most renowned Vishnu. But to protect your family, worship the ancestors. To secure safety, worship moral people. To become strong, worship the winds, or Vayu. To become a king, worship kings. That's the summary of the advice, really. If you want to destroy, who is that? Who do you think? This is also a nakshatra. This would be the Mula, Nirti. If you want to destroy, then worship Nirti, the goddess of lies. If you desire pleasure, worship intoxication. I got a footnote. Let's see what that is. Names of the divinities, respectively. Brahmanapati, teachers, Indra, Prajapati. Okay, so there's a list in there. Soma is the intoxication. Now, that's pretty weird, right? So Shukadev Goswami just gave a list of people to worship. So that's pretty weird. That's not very characteristic of the Bhagavatam. So Parikshit's got a question. He says, what is this? What's the point of this long list you just quoted? You just, like before you, like the last thing that you said in chapter 2 was everybody all the time, everywhere, in all circumstances should worship Hari. And then you say, but if you want knowledge, worship if you want, enlightenment, worship the knowledgeable. If you want pleasure, worship Indra. If you want this to that, if you want that to date, if you want this to do. So, So Shuka explains. And this also will clarify for you the Indian and Vedic concept of religion. It's very baffling to people, practically everybody, because it's so, the Indian concept of life, the Vedic concept of life, is so fluid and instance specific. So, like when talking to person A, the Indian character when talking to person A becomes a certain type of person, and when talking to person B is a totally different kind of person. Talking to person C is very, very different. They talk differently, etc. That's the Vedic idea, is that the essence, the essential truth, has to be presented to different people in different ways according to how they digest it. And this is why you got apparently millions of different paths, religious and spiritual paths coming out of India. People, what baffles people is that they're all actually permutations or applications of one path. So Shuka is basically going to explain that now. He says, sages and scriptures encourage worldly people to fulfill their mundane, hey Bhima, to fulfill their mundane ambitions by worshiping the gods. Because when they become involved in worship, they start to deal with priests. This is very interesting. People who have read scripture carefully. The more they deal with such people, the more likely they are to encounter a rare soul who actually understands the sacred text. The more they encounter such souls, the better their chances of coming into the company of devotees, of the all-attractive. And when that finally happens, they can attain the supreme benediction, unwavering heartfelt affection to the all-attractive. So here he says, Brikshit says, you just said everybody everywhere all the time should focus and worship on Hari. Then in the next breath, literally, you say, but people who want to destroy stuff should worship Niriti, and people who want to enjoy stuff should worship Indra. And you gave a list of like 20 million things. So what gives? So Sukha explains that people are not ready to drop everything all the time and only focus their whole life on Bhagavan. They're ready to pursue their goals. They're ready to pursue their ambitions. So what the Vedas do is they say, okay, great. Pursue your ambition in relationship with this type of divinity that we explain in the Vedas. So in order to do that, you need to associate with people who understand, who have read the Vedas. Like, if you actually took this seriously, that if you wanted to become beautiful, you should worship Urvashi. If you really believed that, if you really took that seriously, then you would go out and find somebody that knows about Urvashi and how to worship her. Now, what happens to you? You encounter all these far out people trying to find somebody who knows how to worship Urvashi. And eventually you start encountering people that have actually read the Bhagavatam, the Puranas, the Upanishads, the Vedas, the Brahmanas, the Aranyakas. So then your chances for broadening your horizons about what's important increase because of the kind of people that you're hanging out with on your mundane quest to become beautiful. Now, you finally find somebody that knows how to worship Urvashi, you're going to start doing the stuff that they do, and you're going to get into their inner crowd. Amongst that little inner crowd of people, there's still gradations. There's people who have read the Vedas, and then there's a few people that have really, literally, truly understand them. So eventually, by finding people that know how to do this ritual, know how to do that ritual, and know how to worship this person, you have a good chance of contacting somebody that really understands what's in this Vedas. Then your horizons can really broaden. The more your horizons broaden, the less you have ambitions and interests that are not inclusive or related to Vishnu at all. The more you broaden your horizon, the more you see Vishnu as the essence of yourself and everything. So the more all of your desires become inclusive of Bhagavan. So then after meeting some of those people, you meet one person, wow, that's amazing. You start to gravitate towards that person and who understands the Vedas, didn't just read it or copies it or follows it. And then you meet 2 or 3 of them, and the one that really understands it the most profound experience that you have is the Bhakta, the one who's got feeling, and they feel Vishnu. They feel the meaning of the text, not just think it. And think it. It's their clear thinking of the text that allows them to feel it so deeply. And so then you get to associate with bhaktas of Bhagavan, Bhagavad Bhakta. Then you come to the ability, then your horizons will be broadened to the point that you're able to do what Shuka is saying. His main message is everyone all the time should always be focused on Hari. It's not Bhima about following your heart deeply or not. It's about following this. The Vedic religion, the Vedic social structure is set up in a way that if you follow, it tells everybody how to fulfill their desire. Fulfilling it by the Veda will lead you to more contact with the Veda. If you just go out to like for what are those like Forever 21 or Mac or something to try to be beautiful, then you're not going to get any benefit from that, except maybe you'll be beautiful. But if you try to follow the Vedic path for being beautiful, then you're going to start worshiping goddesses and things like that, and associating with people who have studied who these goddesses are and how to worship them, and that's going to lead you on this conveyor belt that goes up to divine realization. And that's what the purpose of all this junk is. It's marketing, actually. Compassionate marketing, spiritual marketing. So they're marketing to people that are not interested in, they have no concept of spirituality at all. They're interested in other stuff. So they figured out how to market the most beneficial thing to the people that are not interested in the most beneficial thing. That's what the Vedic sages figured out. The king expressed a doubt. The king's doubt is this: if they're materialistic, these people that should worship so and so and so and so, they're materialistic, right? So if they're materialistic, then why would they be very much interested in hearing from the wise people and the devoted, even when they finally meet such rare people? So his doubt is, let's just stick on this beauty thing. You get a person that's obsessed with being beautiful, and then they hear that, okay, you want to be beautiful, worship, do this ritual, worship Urvashi, worship the nakshatras in this way. And they take it seriously, and they set out to do that. So his first question is, why would they take it seriously? Second of all, you say that by doing so, they're going to come into contact with the Veda and meet people that really understand the Veda, but they won't even pay attention to those people, so how will it benefit them? So Shuka says, when one performs the duties of worship, one invariably becomes more responsible and less selfish. This is an interesting thing. Thus, the incessantly swirling waves of materialism begin to subside, and spiritual knowledge begins to arise, along with the perception of self-satisfaction. This is a really interesting phenomena. Even if you're pursuing a highly selfish or trivial or material goal, if you do it according to the way somebody instructs you to do it, then by doing it, like let's say most women will go to Cosmopolitan magazine or to a hair salon or something and get the advice from there about how to be beautiful. So the act of following that advice makes their identity more centered upon that salon or more centered upon that magazine. And it makes their inner being more open to that magazine and those authors, those writers, those columnists. And you see what I'm saying? And by following the advice that they give, it also makes them less maverick, which could be negative. I mean, without the Vedic thing, without having an actual good person to follow, it's not necessarily any better or worse. But just to illustrate how psychology works, it makes them less maverick or independent in how they act, and it makes them more of a student or a disciple of the Cosmo magazine or the awesome beauty esthetician or whatever that, right? So now, if you're following the Veda for that, then the very act of doing, for example, some beauty ritual, it doesn't just give you beauty, it gives you the samskar, the impression of doing what the Veda has said. So this is what Shuka is saying, is that actually their materialism and the type of fractured intellect that they have, or separated intellect, it subsides the more that they follow the advice of the Veda. And as this fractured, or what would a fractured or separatist or disoriented intellect comes to be more oriented towards the Veda, they become less materialistic. They become more interested in what the Veda has to say. This is why religion, he says, even in a mundane form, is the masses' tried and true path. towards annihilating the self-centered ego and gaining an opportunity to develop the link of selfless devotion. When one becomes purified by the duties of religion, it becomes very difficult. It becomes very difficult not to develop heartfelt affection for discussing Hari. You see, that's the basic thing. Even for those of you who are trying to be bhaktas, trying to do bhakti yoga, bhakti sadhana, the actual thing is there's too many anarthas. There's too many aparats and anarthas. There's too many non-devotional dirts and stones and rocks that are ingrained into our bhav, our being. It's not that the practice is good or not good or whatever. It's these antithetical stains in our intellect and emotions that prevent us from even doing bhakti at all. So the actual effort, even if you're doing bhakti yoga, practically, honestly speaking, the actual effort is to get rid of your anarthas, not really to practice bhakti. The practice of bhakti is super easy, super fast, and super effective. But the qualification to practice it properly is very difficult to achieve. And this is why even for a bhakti sadhaka or a bhakta, you have tons and tons and tons of yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, equivalents of those things that you have to do that are duties that get rid of your egoic intellect. And so the Vedic culture is set up so that all of the karma yoga and jnana yoga and all the dharma leads a person in that direction. Whew. Bhagavatam will take your attention if you let it. How are we doing on time? Good. Okay, now, for some reason, the narrative in the Bhagavatam flips. So you remember how the Bhagavatam is structured? You've got sages sitting in the forest at the beginning of Kali Yuga trying to figure out how to benefit Kali Yuga. And you have Sutta come to them and start to answer their questions. That's level 1 of the Bhagavatam narration. Sutta starts telling them about Shuka, answering questions to Parikshit, explaining the Bhagavatam to Parikshit. And Shuka learned the Bhagavatam from his father Vyasa. So you got this three-tiered thing going on in Bhagavatam. So we had been on the level where Shuka and Parikshit were talking. But now for some reason the narration drops down to level 1 again, so you're going to hear Sutta and Shonaka. Shonaka is the leader of the sages that are sitting in the forest trying to help at the beginning of Kali Yuga. Shonaka was amazed to hear Sutta narrate this discussion between Shuka and the king. When he heard Shuka confirm the exalted position of discussions about how he stood up enthusiastically and declared his own desire to hear more about the all-attractive height. So Shuka is super enthusiastic, super awesome. I'm Shonaka. He's super awesome, so enthusiastic. So why is he so excited? Because Shuka made this statement: everyone, all the time, always, in all circumstances, should hear about and speak about, so that they can remember Hari. That's the main thing. Remember Hari. Focus your being on Hari. Shonaka loves that. Then the king says, "What about all this other, some other sage in that second level complained? What about the rest of religion? That's meaningless." And then Shuka explained, all the rest of religion is meaningful because it leads you to that place where you can actually do this meaningfully. And so Shonaka is totally stoked. Not only did Shuka explain the importance of Hari Kirtan, he explained how everything else is a servant or path leading to that, leading to Hari Kirtan. So from 2 angles, he he glorified Hari Kirtan so much. Hari Kirtan. When he stood up enthusiastically and he said, "What other questions? What other questions did the king have for Vyasa's poetic and sagacious son?" After hearing this extremely perfect answer to his original question. So he's like, whoa, I want to hear more. So the king had some other questions, right? What are they? They discussed many things, Sutta replied. Are you sure you want to hear them all? So really, the Bhagavatam could have sort of ended here. Just with the king's question was, what should everybody do all the time, even at the point of death? And Sukha answered. They should focus their being on Bhagavan by hearing and discussing about him. And if they can't do that, or they don't even see the merit in it, then let them follow Vedic paths to get there. That could have been it. So, but Shonaka doesn't want it to end, so he says, what other questions? Didn't the king have some more questions about this stuff? And then Sutta says, yeah, you had a lot of questions. You sure you want to hear all this stuff? Sutta knew that Shonaka was completely dedicated to hearing about the all-attractive. But he subtly questioned if the rest of the assembled sages were of the same mind. Now, I love this answer. O learned Sutta, Shonaka said in a pained voice, like he was insulted, like, you don't believe that I want to hear this? O learned Sutta, are we not listening to you very carefully? It is only right that you continue speaking to us. Why are you taunting me with this question of if I really want my answer? Then Sutta says, yeah, but maybe all of what they discuss is not directly about Hari. No, Shonaka replied, the sage and the king were both very saintly. Therefore, everything they discussed would certainly inexorably lead to Hari, for discussion of Hari is the constant anchor of the saintly. This is your barometer. For some of you guys listening, this might be from a different world and not relevant to you. But for some of you guys who are listening, this is very relevant. This is your barometer to measure how much of a bhakta anybody actually is. It really does not matter one tiny bit what they look like, what they dress like, what they eat or don't eat, where they sleep, etc., etc. That doesn't really matter. The only true barometer is how quickly and firmly does their heart and mind go to Harikatha, discussion of Hari, and how inexorably does everything that they talk about have some kind of relevance to Vishnu Bhakti, and that type of thing. The longer you can get a person to have no depth of spiritual content, no relation to Bhagavan in their mind and activities, the less advanced they are in Bhakti. And that's the only barometer. So, knowing that, Shonaka said, you got to be kidding me. Of course. Sutta said, maybe they're not going to talk about Hari. You want me to tell you everything they said? And Shonaka said, I know they're going to talk about Hari because they're awesome people. They're amazing sadhus. What else are they going to talk about? Even if they start talking about the protests in such and such, that they'll talk about it with a slant of how it relates to Hari, and therefore the conversation will come back to that. But you see that in the community of bhaktas these days, there's practically no Harikatha. It lasts for like 3 seconds. All right, but Sutta tests him. What do you mean? This king is a warrior. He's not a sadhu. He's not a spiritualist. He's a warrior. So Shonaka replied, he was a warrior, but he was a Pandava. He was certainly a great devotee. Even as a child, he would reenact Krishna's pastimes with his toys. As for the sages, The blessed son of Vyas was also completely dedicated to Vasudev's son. The two, Parikshit and Shuka, were great souls, and when great souls speak, the discussion must certainly rise to the topic of Krishna. Sutta looked out at all the sages gathered around him. All right, so now he's thinking. This is also hard for us to understand. Let's say somebody asks you a really intimate question about your sex life. Are you just going to divulge your information? No, because it's intimate. It means a lot to you, and it's part of your inner being, right? Part of your private life. So you're going to examine the person to answer the question, and you're going to examine anybody else that's around and listening at the time, right? So people have no idea. Like if you ask somebody, hey, what kind of sadhana do you do? Oh, who's your guru? Are you a vegetarian? Do you this, that? And you just expect the people are going to tell you. It's like saying, hey, what's your favorite sex position? It's pretty forward. But people don't have the concept that the spiritual stuff is real to people and meaningful and important. So Sutta, this is deeply heartfelt stuff that Sutta is talking about here. And he actually is not overly eager to throw pearls to the swine, which is one of my biggest problems. He's not overly eager to throw pearls to the swine. He doesn't just want to tell everybody what's on his mind. He wants to speak to people that will value what he has to say. So first thing he did was he tested Shonaka, and Shonaka was an easy pass. Does this guy really want to hear about Krishna? And then definitely, this guy is great. He wants to hear about Krishna. But what about all these other dudes over here? So he looks out at all the sages gathered around him. Perhaps they were not eager to continue listening. So he says, well, we've been talking for a long time already. Maybe we should take a break first and return tomorrow to discuss these things. You try that. If you ever speak to like an assembly of people on Bhagavatam or whatever, you like speak for like 20 minutes and then say, we've been talking for a long time. You guys want to go to lunch or something? People will be like, yeah, I think, it's kind of time to go. So he tried that. Shonaka replied, this is Shonaka's reply. But he knows now that he's replying on behalf of these people. But this reply is great. He says, the sun rises and the sun sets. When the sun rises and sets, it steals the moments of our lives. Every time. You're asking us to wait for another sunset. Every time the sun rises and sets, it steals more time. But a moment spent discussing the subject of topmost poetry cannot be stolen away. That's what he said. A single moment of hearing about Krishna is more valuable than years and years of ordinary life. So what is the point of living if we are not hearing about Krishna? This guy's on another level. Trees are alive and they live for a very long time. Trees are alive and they live for a very long time, but what is the use of that? I don't want to be like a tree. That's what he's saying. I don't want to be like a tree, live for a long time, take my time, be slow. I want to have a life that's momentary, live fast, die young. That's his attitude. I want my Harikatha right now. Because I don't know what the next moment is going to bring. So no, I don't want to wait for tomorrow. You will never see this. I mean, sometimes you will, but this is such high quality katha. If you could ever see this, if you're ever blessed to have this kind of intensity between a speaker and a listener about Krishna, your life will be radically changed. Sutta played the devil's advocate, gesturing towards the trees that surrounded them in the forest. He said, trees are barely alive. They don't even breathe. Why are you comparing you to trees? So Shonaka has a rhetorical reply. He says, is breathing the most important thing of being alive? Bellows breathe. So should we live like bellows, breathing in and out for years on end? So they have a little fight. Sutta and Shaunak are having a little fight right now, where Sutta is trying to say, you guys take a break. You don't need me to keep talking about Hari. Just take a break. And Sutta says, we don't want to take a break. We want to use every moment. We don't care about how, living a long time, but we want it now. He said, look at the trees. Who cares? They live for a long time. Big deal. Let's burn it out right now. And then Sonika says, what trees? You're not trees. You're breathing. It's different. So Sonika says, big deal. Who cares? Breathing. Bellows, breathe. What should we do? Just breathe like Bellows? So Sutta says, trees are alive, but they don't breathe. Bellows breathe, but they're not alive. So you got your analogies mixed up. To be alive and breathing is special. Why? Because then one can enjoy the world. If you're alive and breathing, then your senses are so activated. This is why aerobic entity, and even the trees are actually breathing in some weird way that's not breath. They're absorbing prana through the leaves, through photosynthesis. But when you absorb through breath, the pranic link to your senses is so high bandwidth. So the life forms that have breath, they have huge bandwidth to their senses, and they can really enjoy sight, sound, touch, etc. So Sutta's counter is, look, you're not a tree and you're not a bellows. A tree is alive, but it doesn't breathe. A bellow breathes, but it's not alive. You're alive and you're breathing, so you could enjoy the world. So what are you doing sitting here listening to me talk about some far out shit? Go out and enjoy life. So Shonaka's reply. He says, what's so special about that? What's so special about enjoying the world? Is it special to eat fancy foods? Don't the beasts also feast? What's so special about eating well? I mean, it's special, right? Wow, what are you going to have today? Post a picture of your lunch. What are you going to cook? It's so special. My mouth is watering. Just for chapati and pickle. But Susan says, yeah, great. But don't animals also have great meals. They really enjoy their meals. How special is it? It's just a fancier version of what animals are doing, so what's so great about that? Okay, how about sex? Is it special to enjoy erotica? Well, don't the beasts also have sex? They have great sex. A lot of them have great sex. They can have tons of sex. Is that really what we should be doing with our time? As human beings, what is so special about human villagers living like forest beasts? Who would praise and glorify the standard of life enjoyed by dogs, pigs, camels, asses, and so-called humans? Sutta, he passionately continued. This guy is really passionate. He's a passionate old sage. Sutta, when we don't hear about the heroism of the hero, the holes of our ears might as well be snake holes. When we don't sing about the one worth singing about, we might as well have the tongues of frogs. If the silken crown decorating our head does not bow to the liberator, then it's nothing but a heavy burden. When our hands do not serve Hari, they might as well be the hands of a corpse, uselessly decorated with glittering golden bracelets. Our eyes might as well be the eyes of a peacock feather, if they do not look upon the forms of Vishnu. Our legs might as well be the roots of trees, if we don't walk to Hari's sacred places. We mortals might as well be dead, if we never touch the life-giving dust from the feet of blessed devotees. If we do not smell the scent of Tulsi from the beautiful feet of Vishnu, what is the use of breathing? We might as well be a breathing corpse. Worst of all, Shuka concluded, if we pronounce Hari's name, but our heart does not melt and erupt in emotions like tears and goosebumps, then what's the use of our heart? Is it really a heart, or is it a chunk of iron? So my request is come back and reread this paragraph next year, and the year after that, and the year after that, as you develop in your understanding of Vishnu and Bhagavan and Bhakti. This is some amazing stuff that he said here. It's like, you know how you can get goosebumps when you listen to like Pentecostal sermons and things like that. This is like that kind of thing. This guy's got so much conviction and passion, and especially the last statement. So Sutta was speechless with delight to hear Shaunika so boldly declare such strong devotional sentiments. My dear boy, Shaunika pleaded softly with tears now streaming down his face. Please teach us what you have learned from that foremost devotee, Vyasa's son, whose words soothe our mind. He was an expert in self-realization, and the king was asking the very best questions. So Shaunika got really, really emotional. Because Sutta taunted him sort of that, I think I'm going to end now. And then when Shaunika said, no, don't end, there must be more to the discussion that they had. Please tell us. Then he was like, yeah, are you sure? Blah, blah, blah. I don't know. It's going to take really long. Maybe you should do something else with your life. You know, time is valuable. You sure you want to spend all this time? That's why they start talking about the length of life. And Shaunika gets more and more passionate and more emotional about this. I have this opportunity. To hear what Vyas explained about Krishna, the way that Vyasa's son, Shuka, who really understands Krishna even better than Vyas, the way that he explained it to Parikshit, who met Krishna when he was in the womb. I have a chance to hear that. But you want to take away that chance from me? It's made him really emotional. Tell me it now. So Sutta was really convinced this guy really deserves to hear this. This guy really deserves this. Let me give him my time, and let me share my inner self with this person. The Sutta said, Uttara's son, King Parikshit, concentrated his mind ever more deeply and lovingly on Krishna, clearly understanding the spiritual meaning in the answers he heard from Vyasa's son Shuka. That's what we need to do. Thank you, Bhavana. That's what we need to do. It's concentration of the mind deeply by trying to clearly understand the spiritual meaning in what you're hearing from the Bhagavatam. It's active listening. Active listening. Listening is the key word. By that constant undisturbed meditation, he lost even the most deeply rooted possessiveness for anything and everything in his kingdom. His friends, wealth, animals, hometown, children, wife, and even his sense of self. You see how important a wife is to the guy's identity. It's listed. It's increasing. Increasing order of how dear the things become to you, to your identity. Friends, friends change. Wealth is pretty important, more important. Animals, wealth is more important than friends. Animals, because animals generate the wealth. Hometown, that's the land that supports the animals. But then you have your own children. And then you have the person that made the children, the wife. And then finally it's your own self. So he said that he said that the king listened to Shukadev so deeply that he lost possessiveness of all these things. His mind became completely dissolved into the subject. Now he uses the word saturated. His broad mind was completely saturated, dissolved, saturated with interest in hearing about divine love of Krishna. Fully aware of his impending death, he renounced all endeavors for the three ordinary aims of life and very firmly desired heartfelt love for the all-attractive son of Vasudeva. So he reacted to Shuka's words in much the same way as you have reacted to mine. He wanted to hear more. So this is the interesting thing. And that's the end of this chapter. The interesting thing is that actually, in this level, remember I explained there's 3 levels of how the Bhagavatam's being narrated. There's Vyasa who composed it, and then Shuka and Parikshit are discussing it, and then Sutta and Shonaka are discussing the conversation between Shuka and Vyasa. So what Sutta now reveals is that what happened in the second level conversation is King asked the question, what's the most important thing to do for everybody all the time, even at the time of death? Shonaka answered the question. You have to focus your reality. You have to focus yourself on the real center of reality, which is Bhagavan. And then there's a couple of questions, clarifications. What about this? What about religion? What about other things to do? And those things are answered, and then it's done. The question is answered. So what Sutta reveals now is that Parikshit reacted in exactly the same way that Shonaka reacted. He reacted in a panic. Wait, I have a chance to hear from Shuka, the son of Vyasadeva, and learn about Krishna from Shuka, who I've searched for all my life. And now he might just stand up and leave now because he finished answering my question. So he says, there must be more. So Parikshit is going to mirror the Shonaka's reaction. And then you're going to hear about this next. Okay, so let's end it there. Wow, we went a little bit over time. All right, guys. I'm sure you want to know what the 3 goals of life. You probably know that. Kitty, you have good. You're like a modern Shonaka. You got good enthusiasm for this. Everybody, thank you very much. So see you tomorrow.